All right. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Brand Builder TV, where, look, brand loyalty is king simply because it maps to trust, and trust is the long game. Don't let anybody kid you. It's all about trust. But there is a difference between branding and marketing in 2004 versus 2020. That's what we're going to talk about today. And our guest today, Josh Vizcay. Did I say that correctly?
Absolutely.
Josh Vizcay. Um, I'm going to read it right off of his profile on LinkedIn. General Business Concierge Agent. He has a podcast called "I Love South Orange County" podcast, and also NFL betting gambling podcast. So, as any entrepreneur, he's got a lot of balls in the air. It sounds like we're going to get
Absolutely.
along just fine. So, Josh, give us that 30,000-foot view: who you are, where you came from, and where you see yourself going.
Oh, absolutely. My parents came from Cuba with no clothes on their back. And when my mom passed away, she passed away with $2 million liquid assets. And she
Wow.
had 4 condos that she filled with food and clothing and cars for people who got trouble in the church so they could live in there. So we've always had an abundance mentality. I had a restaurant for 6 years, and my mom said, we came from Cuba. Anybody that wants a plate of food, you're going to have to give it to them. And the way I grew up, that if I didn't give somebody a plate of food, she would burn the restaurant down. So I did that, and it ended up being a revenue generating activity. The head mobster homeless guy said, you can't eat for free at this guy's restaurant unless you pass out flyers. So I had homeless people passing out flyers, and it's always better to be lucky than good. This was in a place called Pinellas Park, Florida. So you had to drive from Madera Beach, where Hulk Hogan, the wrestler guy and the Macho Man used to live. You used to have to drive by Pinellas Park to get to Tampa, where the Yankees train. Lo and behold, George Steinbrenner finds my restaurant, comes in, becomes a regular, comes in there with his bodyguard. George Steinbrenner didn't talk. His bodyguard was always talking. The only time George Steinbrenner would talk, he would just point at me and give me business advice. So I'm sitting here getting business advice from a billionaire. And his had a couple of billionaire friends come in there. One was Aldo Lahi. And I encourage anybody to look up this firm's Alp South. It's a billion-dollar prosthetics company. I didn't understand what he said the first 6 months coming into the restaurant. But he started giving me free business advice. So my parents come from Cuba. My mom opens up a cleaning company. We open up a church. We open up a restaurant. I opened up my own restaurant so I can get my ideas out there, because my mom would shut me down immediately. And I have Aldo Lahi. I have a guy by the name of Andrew Barnes, who started the Pointer Institute and was the publisher of the St. Petersburg Times. And they used to collaborate with the New York Times and get Pulitzer, train people for Pulitzers. A Cry in the Night, about a murder in a place called Gulfport, Florida. We had Thomas French come in there, and he would give me writing advice. So it's always better to be lucky than good. And that's a little bit about my history. Now I'm what I call myself, I'm a category of one, like everybody else, who is successful these days in the modern branding world, as you call it, which is much different than 2004. And I start out with portfolio management, but then people find out, hey man, you're smart, you're a little different than everybody else. What else can you do? And that opens up a big can of worms. And like, the insight that you're giving, real intelligence is situational intelligence. So I feel very, very fortunate that I've been lucky and good and work hard. I got 2 master's degrees in business. But the real master's degrees is being mindful and saying, you know what, this is George Steinbrenner talking to me. Let me shut up. Let me forget everything that's going on, right? Salesmen think short term. Businessmen think long term. I say that so many times to clients, but it comes up so much. And for whatever reason, people don't get that, but you need to drive it into people. Like you said in the introduction, the long game, right, is what's important. And that's where your higher level intelligence comes in.
I love that, man. And we have a little bit in common because you were born and raised and brought up in the immigrant mentality, which I believe
Right,
they have the dynamic duo in life, right? When you
right,
have this dynamic duo, you can't lose. You're blessed for where you are, and
right,
you're ready for more, right?
right.
That's that. And I was raised in the World War II generation. My dad was
The
two,
greatest generation.
and he was 82nd Airborne World War II, and he was two generations ahead when they adopted me. So I was born in that or raised in that same mentality where my dad's whole thought process was lace up your boots, get to work. Nobody wants to hear it, right?
Right.
And that's what the successful immigrant mentality is. And what I also love about your story too is, um, and I want to get into the branding part, but what I love about it is coming from Cuba, right? How important it is and how powerful it is to understand that when you are born and raised in a capitalist environment,
Right.
how powerful that is. And I think in today's world, and when you see a lot of the things that are going on in the political world, a lot of young people are misled thinking that the socialist is the way to go. And
Big time.
man, they couldn't. And I tell people, if you even have an inkling, just get yourself over to Venezuela.
Exactly.
Just go over there. Go over to Venezuela. And that's why if your mom was still here, that's who you want to listen to, right? Because they've lived it. They've
Oh,
been there.
exactly. They lived it, and it goes back to branding. Branding is you're a tattoo in somebody's brain that it doesn't matter if somebody sees a commercial for Mass Mutual or whatever, or the Omaha. They think of me, and they're like, "Well, I saw this commercial, and I thought of you," because as immigrant mentality, you keep things crystal clear, and you're getting to one of the other phrases I say 10 times every day. The fastest way for a poor person to succeed in the United States or anywhere in the world is through capitalism
Yes.
and through a free enterprise system, and being able to crystal clearly be able to communicate exactly what value is, right? And my podcast is growing and people are going crazy over it. And you go on my Twitter, right? And you'll see it pinned there. I give people the exact definition out of the book, out of my MBA, what value is: the psychological factors plus functional factors divided by time and money. When you're crystal clear about that and you're able to live it, to communicate it, there's no doubt about that. We live in the richest country ever in the world. It's impossible for you not to do well. In fact, you have to mess it up. You have to give yourself self-inflicted wounds in order to not be able to succeed, whatever your definition of success is. And we're privileged, and that's why gratitude is one of the things, that you have to have, because we are privileged and we're lucky that regardless of how many faults we have addiction, whatever it is, you look at Kudlow, right? You look at Kudlow, who's the head economic guy for Trump, and you and I we talked about Lee Steinberg, right? Both those guys would admit they're crack addicts. They're addicted to cocaine, and they went through rehabs. But look at him. I just saw Lee Steinberger hugging Tua Tagovailoa, and he's going to get a $20 million bonus. And the man's a crack addict. He's skinny because he's done too much cocaine. But we forgive him. We don't judge him. And because we live in the richest country in the world, all right? You look at Venezuela and Cuba. I could say right now, direct knowledge that the people that do well in Venezuela and Cuba are the people who are capitalists, who are fake people in the Communist Party. They'll say one thing and the other thing, but they're selling, and they're doing big time selling in the black market. Both places have rich, because the cream rises to the top. There's really no such thing as socialism. All you do is you trade things, have parades, have a huge facade, but at the end of the day, you're either going to have a legit market or you're going to have a black underground market. North Korea is a perfect example of that. You can have a bigger prison in North Korea, right? But the biggest money source for everybody is people smuggling things from China, right? And it's almost like a drug deal, you know, and you got to trust your instincts. When you're thinking about branding, it's all about instincts and heuristics. They, the Kim Jong-un changed the law, and he said, okay, all the border patrol, you can now keep the merchandise and arrest the people, right? Has that stopped smuggling? No. People are now using psychology. They're using their instincts to, like a drug deal, identify, like the same way you identify a prospect, the same way you identify somebody who's going to make you money and help you pay your bill. That instinct, they see to identify which border guard is going to take the money and not arrest them. And it's $1 billion industry.
It's so true. And one of the things you said earlier that I want to go deeper on, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, so help me out,
Sure.
is about intelligence, right? Different definitions of intelligence. I'm from the East Coast. I'm from Jersey, Philly area.
Nice.
So I spent 17 years in the most violent cities that this country knows. And
Yes.
and
I dated a girl in Coney Island in Brooklyn, a Russian Jewish girl.
yeah, I mean, if anybody knows Camden, New Jersey, North Philly, Southwest Philly, Trenton, Newark, I spent 17 years there, and some of the most successful entrepreneurs that have the DNA, that have that entrepreneurial DNA, are the drug dealers.
Exactly.
They just run their businesses exactly like a successful, legitimate, or
sometimes better, and that upsets me.
Yes.
It upsets me when the drug trade and the pedophile trade are more organized and have better systems than legitimate companies.
Yeah, and and that's the truth, man. If you're willing to look around and be honest, and you spend any time in the real world, that is the absolute truth. Let's get back to talking about branding, right? In 2020 versus 2004. My whole belief is this, and I'd like you to go deeper on this, is the difference between 2004 and 2020. 2004, it's what you knew and who you knew. 2020, it's what you know, who you know, but who knows you.
Right.
So let's talk about that, man, because I know one of my biggest things is I just spoke in front of a bunch of entrepreneurs the other day, and I'm sharing with them how powerful this medium is that we're on right now.
Absolutely.
Podcast. It is 2020, 21, 22. Podcasts are the way to go. Share some thoughts with us.
Absolutely. Well, I'll go a little bit backwards. First, about podcasting, right? And then about who knows you, okay? And I love the phrase, everybody knows. Because everybody knows. You can fool half the people half the time, or you can't fool everybody all of the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're in the information age, right? And I think between you and I, we're probably over 100 years, right? So it's very, very hard to pull the wool over our eyes. And we know that we don't want anybody in our lives who we can pull the wool over our lives, because it's about survival. Mm-hmm. And we both live like in Southern California, very expensive to live here. But it doesn't matter where you are. It's expensive. And what I love about podcasting is, like this podcast that we're on now, any podcast that I have, I wanted to have a shelf life for 10 years. I want somebody to come 10 years from now, be able to retrieve something from it. I have right here a book from Winston Churchill, because someone who I called out, right? And I love filtering out people, because it's always, when you're raw and you're honest, it filters out the fake people in your life. And they were questioning a Winston Churchill thing of mine, because I called them out. I said, hey, you're full of blah, blah, blah. Because, the East Coast in me, because I've been there too, So I got the Winston Churchill, but this is from the 1930s, and it's relevant now. So that's what I want my podcast to be. That's always the goal. And then who knows you, right? I have a podcast with Ben Goya. And the reason I got him was because he, even though I didn't know him, he referred to me the biggest client I've ever had, a guy net worth of, $100 million. Okay. And bottom line, right? The man, I called him, he picks up the phone, and he's going to fund my wife's psychotherapist, right? So who knows you, right? And right? Purpose and outcome. Because my wife was just talking about the clinic she works at. And the meetings are horrible, right? That's why I don't believe in meetings, but I run the best meeting in the world, because you have to have a specific purpose and you have to have an outcome, a specific actionable outcome that makes you money. That's it. And that's branding. And who knows you? Somebody who can fund your business, somebody who can help you pay your bills, somebody, if it's social, that makes you laugh, whatever, right? But who knows you is somebody who's an action word, right? Who's a verb versus unproductive adjective. It goes back to, and I think you and I were privileged that we had Vietnam era PE coaches. And it seems like we had the same family. Vietnam era PE coaches, when I was in high school, they would punch you, they would throw you to the ground. When you got up, they would knock you down. And then you would tell your mom, and your mom would say, what did you do to piss your PE teacher off? Right?
Yeah.
He did that to you. And you learn from your mistakes. You know, I have on my podcast, I'm privileged to have 2016 Junior College Tennis Coach of the Year. Great guy. You go to his tennis matches, big time fear and respect. His opponents, his team, everybody. But he was saying last night, he was, you know, what am I going to talk to my team about? And we're going to talk about no fear of failure, right? No fear of failure. And I said, you know what? I don't believe in failure. Okay? You fail when you don't learn from your mistakes. All right? If I didn't make money at the restaurant one day, I didn't fail. I mean, the first 2 weeks, nobody showed up. And it got to the point where the food I was making one day was the money I made. I might the food for the next day, but I was too stupid and naive and young to quit. So I said, okay, what can I do to better the situation? I'm going to get up at 4. I'm going to prep, and then I'm going to pass out flyers for 4 hours. I'm going to come here instead of having the restaurant open till 9. I'm going to close it at 6. And I ended up flourishing, you know. And I told him that, and he got it. And I said, what you should fear, all right, is not failure or fear. What you should fear is not learning from your mistakes, not using your head instead of your feet to think, you know.
Yeah.
So who knows you? When you exhibit that, you're going to attract, right? The law of attraction. You're going to attract people that will fund things, people that will pay for things. Your fake friends will make you laugh. Your real friends will make you cry. So you need people in your life who will challenge you, who will insult you, who will get mad at you if you're not learning from your mistakes, man. So that's who you need to know. And I think society needs to, from the top level on down, Duncan Hunter over there, if he would have had people, real people, Katie Hill. We'll go on both sides of the aisle. You got Katie Hill, liberal, and you got Duncan Hunter, all right? Both people in Congress who had to resign from their positions because they had fake people around them, right? Mm-hmm. Lee Steinberger and Cutler, we'll go back to them. You do a line in front of me, I'm going to hit you in your face, and I'm going to take all that cocaine that I've done it, and I'll flush it down the toilet, and I'm going to drag you to rehab, and I'm going to make sure you learn rehab. He didn't have people like that. He had to learn it by himself. So there's different levels of intelligences. There's different levels of success. Just because you make money doesn't make you smart. Just because you're laughing, a lot of people, oh, this guy was laughing and smiling, and he killed himself because you didn't know what was inside. Impulse control. So we get back to people like you and me. You have to be constantly learning, adapting, growing, evolving, listening, being mindful. You know, I'm talking a lot, but sometimes you wouldn't even know me because I'm sitting there for 2 hours. If I had George Steinberger sitting in front of me, you didn't hear me say anything, man. I was listening. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's so key. And one of the things that I want to go deeper on in the real practical world in 2020 is exactly what we're both on right now, and what we both are host with is that digital marketing or digital stage world, which is podcast. Right. I just did a talk with a group of entrepreneurs the other day, and I said, raise of hands, how many people here are booking themselves on 3 podcasts a month that have your ideal audience, not one raised their hand. I said, you're going to lose in today's world. The digital stages are where it's at. There's so many things that you can leverage just from podcast alone, right? One podcast, how much you can repurpose this, getting in front of your ideal audience, and then creating relationships that go so deep
Exactly.
with it.
Because
So
people get to know you.
right. And and like I tell people, if you're not evolving in 2020, life says we don't care.
Right.
You're going to be obsolete, right? That's your fault. You didn't keep up. You didn't pay attention. You didn't have that level of awareness in your business. So I think there's so many people focusing on why they feel like the digital world is so negative. I think we are living in a time where I can reach out, and you're talking about Lee Steinberg, right? I just had one of his business partners back in the day on, Dave Meltzer, who's a friend of mine.
Dave Meltzer, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, Dave
I'm
Meltzer
wearing the
was on.
Cited hat because Dave Meltzer founded Cited.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's why I wore the hat to the.
Yeah. So
not to be rude, because some people get mad at the hat, but the hat had a purpose.
That's right. But we're living in a time, right, where Instagram, you could DM people that you couldn't even think 10, 15 years ago that you could even get to, right? That you could even connect with. So the world we're living in, you can look at this as your heaviest anchor, your strongest propeller, right? That's your choice.
Right. It's the way people used to say, well, you know, a gun, right? You can use a gun for a good purpose, or you can use a gun for a bad purpose. It's the same thing. But I think podcasting, and the reason that podcasting is so successful, I think you and I both, because bottom line, right? If you're an entrepreneur, if it's not making money, it doesn't make sense. So I've made money podcasting. Podcasting has accelerated my business. Podcasting is a vehicle, especially if you got good communication skill. But we live in the richest country in the world. So if you don't have good communication skill, you can work hard to do it, to have good communication skill. So either way, you can use podcasts to monetize. Now, what I love about podcasting is I lived a long time on the West Coast. I lived on the East Coast. Most podcasts, I speed up twice as much. Some West Coast people, hey, Josh, you're talking too fast. Well, you can slow it up to half speed. Plus, it's intimate, right? I have people, I manage their life savings. So they have anxiety. To get that anxiety, they can listen to one of my podcasts, and they can listen to the way I think. They can listen to my voice. Instead of calling me saying, I just saw CNBC today, the stock market went down. No. They just turn on the gambling podcast where I use business and financial concepts in order to predict the outcome of football games, which I've done college basketball for 11 years, and I made money doing it. We're 100% transparent. But what we do is we go through, and I counted up 30 different concepts straight out of the book, because I feel this from you, man. All right. And we just talked about the drug trade, billion-dollar trade, the border in North Korea on feel, right? And you and I are both, I can tell right away, we're two things, okay? Number one, we're taxpayer advocates. Number two, we're advocates of capitalism.
Absolutely.
Part of the Gambling Podcast is teaching people fundamentals of how you can predict behavior, because a lot of people are cowards and a lot of people stick to conventional wisdom. So you can predict their behaviors and monetize it. And I illustrate that through teaching people how to wager on football games, because Bill Belichick doesn't change. Nick Saban doesn't change. These guys have, Andy Reid doesn't change. They have rigid mentalities that I've monetized for years. So people can, right now, the whole year of podcasts, I tell people, listen to the first one, because you're not worried about the outcome of the game. Listen to why we predicted what we predicted, and what, you know, the whys, so you can learn capitalism and the fundamentals of finance. And that's the beauty of a podcast. Because if you want to find out if somebody's full of crap, listen to what they said 6 months ago. And is it true what they said, or was it BS? in a podcast, you can't get more credibility and truth and honesty and integrity. All right. People get caught up in integrity and honesty being a moral religion. It isn't. Those are business concepts. So you can predict somebody's behavior. You can predict what's going to happen with your money, whether you can trust this guy with your money, what kind of value this guy or woman brings to you, right? And podcasting is such a great vehicle to do all those things and more, that you're right. You're missing out as a business person if you're not. But, hey, if you're full of crap and you've gotten lucky in life and you got some money and things are going well, don't do podcasts. Stay away. Because people are going to feel out you're full of crap when they listen to you 6 months from now.
Or social media, right? It's
exactly.
We're in a time now that you can run, but you can't hide, right? And eventually, Father Time will tell the truth, and that is the beautiful thing. But on the flip side of that, when you show up authentically, now you create your credibility, and that's that long game, man. That's the trust that everyone's looking for, especially in your personal brand. So I love the way you've actually morphed, everything that you do into your own flavor. So now you rise above the noise and elevate your position, right?
Yeah, because I'm old like you. I remember John Wayne, man, individuality. That's what the United States was originally about, you being an individual, right? And that's one of the things about I love South Orange County, is we're teaching these immigrant communities, they come in and we all have to be the same way. We all have to wear a certain garb. Extreme Islamic communities. I'm not value judging it. It's just what it is, right? And if you step out of the reservation of what it is, boom, you get killed. But you're in the United States, and when some people leave the reservation, they need guides like you and me to say, hey, it's okay for you to be you within the law, within your ability to communicate value. And that's something that's so much needed where we live here in Orange County, especially South Orange County, Irvine area, all that area. They really need to learn how to be individuals in business savvy. It's sad, the guy in South Orange County who got out of the reservation a little bit, he engaged some African Americans. They came in, they killed him. They found the guy in Florida. So we got an opportunity to kind of teach these people. We almost have a moral obligation to teach these people of who they can do business with, how they can do business with, and how to be an individual.
Love it, man. I love it. So I want to be respectful of your time. So Josh, where can everyone find you?
Everybody can find me at Ecosystems Business Concierge. Just type that online and all kinds of things are going to come at you. I remember having the restaurant and somebody said, you're not going to know you're successful until somebody sues you. And people don't have haters if they're not successful. So you're going to see the good and the bad. And I keep it real. I keep it filtered. I have the I Love South Orange County podcast. And I have the ESBC Gambling podcast, which we have a lot of fun with a lot of guys that organically we just met and just boom. Every single podcast for the last 4 months, every episode, every week has more downloads than the week before. And we're not selling anything. Everything's for free. Everything is for fun. We don't want anybody's email address. We're not asking for anything.
Love it, man. Love it. Paying it forward. And that's the abundance mentality. I love that. Hey, listen, I want to thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely.
And coming on, because I know, like every other entrepreneur, right, we have a lot of balls in the air. So
80% of your time, I say that on the podcast, 80% of your time as an entrepreneur has to be in revenue generating activity.
Yeah. So I love that, man. So thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll let you know once it's posted. And I'm looking forward to being a guest on your podcast as well.
Oh man, I'm gonna love listening to your story. I talk a lot, so hopefully if I talked a little bit too much, I apologize.
We're gonna do good, brother. We're gonna do good, man. And we're both in each other's backyard. I'm in North County, San Diego.
Nice.
So
I love it.
Yeah. So, hey, man, thank you so much, and I'll be seeing you in a few weeks.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you,
Thanks,
Dave.
my brother.